The sound before the first thought. Listen carefully. Before you remember your name, before your first fear, before the story of your life began, there was a moment you never learned to notice. A moment before thought. A moment before identity. A moment before the world appeared. You've lived your entire life inside the noise that came after it. Inside memory. Inside interpretation. Inside the echo of other people's voices. But beneath that noise, there's a stillness older than your body. Older than your bloodline. Older than the idea of you. This stillness is not silence. It is the ground of awareness itself, the space where perception begins, before the mind divides it into meaning. Every thought you ever had rose from this field. Every emotion you ever felt passed through this field. Every version of you that lived and died was held inside this one presence. You didn't create it. You didn't discover it. You only forgot it. Awakening begins the moment you stop chasing thoughts and return to the place they arise from. Not forward, not upward, not into some mystical realm. Back into the awareness that was here, before your first breath, and will remain after your last. The mind calls this emptiness. But emptiness is not absence. It is the source of every form you have ever known. It is the sound before the first thought. And now, for the first time in your life, you are hearing it. The first fracture. Stop pretending you don't feel the crack forming. There is a moment in every human life when the story they've been carrying, the identity they've constructed, the beliefs they cling to, the habits that once kept them stable, begins to loosen its hold, not because the world is collapsing, and not because fate has suddenly become cruel, but because the illusion itself can no longer sustain the weight of the awareness growing inside you. It doesn't announce itself with drama. It doesn't explode into your life with warnings or revelations. It arrives quietly, in the subtle tension that forms behind your ribs, in the feeling that something is shifting, though nothing outside has visibly changed. You feel it before you can describe it. You sense it before you can explain it. You recognize it before you admit it. Awakening never begins with peace. It begins with pressure. A tightening in the chest, a thinning of the internal ground you've stood on for years, a wordless sense that the structure you've relied upon is no longer strong enough to hold the person you are becoming. It shows up first as restlessness, a subtle irritation toward the routines that once helped you escape yourself, a quiet exhaustion toward the roles you've been performing far too long, roles that may have protected you once, but now suffocate more than they support. You begin to feel like you're wearing a life that was tailored for someone else, a past version of you, a version you have already outgrown, though you're still pretending to fit inside it. Every conversation, every obligation, every repeated pattern starts to feel like clothing that shrank in the wash. This is the identity starting to slip through your fingers, not because something is wrong with you, but because something true is trying to break through the shell you've mistaken for you. And this is the stage nobody warned you about, because it feels nothing like awakening. It feels like breaking. It feels like losing your grip on the version of yourself you spent years building. It feels like standing at the edge of your own existence, with no instructions and no guarantee that stepping forward won't pull everything apart. Every illusion dies quietly, silently, and always from the inside. It doesn't fall apart all at once. It fatigues at the edges. It loosens at the seams. It shows you one small inconsistency after another, until you can no longer pretend. you don't see the cracks. You were taught that awakening is light, clarity, revelation. But the first stage is brutality. It is the dismantling of the false self you've spent your entire life defending. It is the stripping away of the stories you believed were your truth, because believing them kept you safe. The mind calls this danger. The soul calls this birth. Look closely at the fracture forming inside you. This is not chaos. This is precision. This is the exact point where your old identity can no longer protect the lie it built itself around. The lie of, this is who I am. The lie of, this is what I must be. The lie that, this story is mine, and I must continue living it. What breaks here is not your life. It is your loyalty to a version of you that was crafted from memory, from wound, from fear, from obedience, from generational survival strategies. You never chose consciously. This fracture is the moment. Your inner architecture reveals its first weakness, not because you failed, but because your consciousness has grown too large for the structure containing it, and something must give. You cannot fit a new awareness inside an old identity. When the cracking begins, it feels like disorientation, like the ground beneath you has become quietly unreliable, like every part of your life is whispering the same message. This no longer fits. Your instincts feel off. Your old coping mechanisms stop working. The beliefs you fought to protect no longer convince you. Even your victories feel strangely hollow, as if you accomplished them for a self you have already abandoned. This is the discomfort before expansion, the uneasiness before clarity, the free fall before recognition. And this is where most people turn back, because this stage feels dangerous. It threatens the illusion of stability. It challenges the identity they've spent years trying to secure. So they run to distraction. They cling to routine. They numb themselves with the same habits that reinforce the very identity, now collapsing because staying asleep will always feel safer than waking up. But you are hearing this because you reach the point where the fracture is no longer interpreted as danger. Something inside you recognizes that this crack, this pressure, this unraveling is not the beginning of your destruction, but the beginning of your emergence. It is no longer a threat. It is an invitation. Something inside you has already stopped pretending. Something inside you has already stepped out of the story. You can feel it, the quiet intelligence pushing you forward, nudging you away from the narrative you've been repeating out of habit. This is the moment. The mind loses its authority. The narrative loses its power. The old self takes its final breath, and you stand on the edge of a choice. Cling to the shell that is already breaking, or step knowingly into the crack that leads directly into truth. Awakening doesn't begin when you feel ready. Awakening begins when you stop resisting what is already falling apart. You stop trying to fix the fracture. You stop trying to glue the old identity back together. You stop negotiating with the version of yourself that was designed for a life you can no longer live. This is the moment you allow the fracture to reveal what was underneath all along. The crack is not your failure. It is your opening, the doorway you avoided, the invitation you ignored, the truth you were not yet strong enough to face. Until now, your awareness has outgrown the cage, and the cage can no longer hold. This is the first step into the life that has been waiting for you on the other side of who you thought you had to be. The collapse of the story You've believed your story for so long that you forgot you were the one writing it. Every human life begins as a blank field, but over time, experience, fear, memory, and repetition begin spinning threads around that field. Those threads slowly form patterns, and the patterns harden into a structure. Someone eventually gives that structure a name, identity, and you spend years defending it as if it were permanent, as if it were truth, as if it were you. But identity is never truth. Identity is architecture, and architecture can collapse. Your memories, your reactions, your fears, your proudest moments, your deepest wounds. None of them are objective reality. They are personal edits, emotional snapshots, selectively stitched fragments arranged to create the illusion of continuity. You think you remember your past, but you mostly remember the meaning you assign to it. Memory is not reality. Memory is interpretation. You were taught to trust this story. You were taught to defend it. You were taught to repeat it until you no longer questioned its authority. But watch what happens the moment you look at your story instead of from inside it. The narrative starts to loosen. The lines you repeated for decades begin to crumble. Events you once believed defined you suddenly look smaller, thinner, and strangely arbitrary. You notice gaps in the timeline, distortions in the emotion, entire chapters that were shaped not by truth, but by survival. Your identity begins to reveal itself for what it has always been, a script rehearsed so many times that you forgot it was a script at all. The story collapses because it was never real, only familiar. Most people cling to familiarity because they mistake repetition for identity. They mistake emotional reflex for personality. They mistake inherited fear for authenticity. They mistake the wounds of those who came before them as their own truth. But you have stepped beneath the surface. You are standing in the basement of your mind, surrounded by the scaffolding that once held your life together. And for the first time, you see the machinery behind the narrative. This is not destruction. This is revelation. The frames, the angles, the edits, the invisible glue of emotional bias holding everything together. You begin to see that your beliefs were shaped long before you understood choice. Your reactions were formed before you knew what autonomy was. Your convictions were sculpted by versions of you that no longer exist. Your emotional patterns were inherited before you knew what inheritance meant. You did not choose your story. You continued it. And now the continuation is breaking. When the story collapses, it is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not cinematic in the way movies teach you transformation should look. It is slow and disorienting. It is the quiet realization that the foundation beneath your identity is made of assumptions you never examined. It is the unsettling discovery that the person you think you are was assembled, not born, a role shaped by memory, a character formed from coping strategies, a self constructed out of emotional repetition. Identity is a costume worn so long that you forgot you were the one who put it on. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. Your past loses its authority. Your future loses its weight. Even your present identity begins to feel like an approximation of something deeper, something older, something untouched by narrative. And then you realize something frightening and liberating. If your story was constructed, it can be dismantled. If it can be dismantled, it can be rebuilt. If it can be rebuilt, it never had power over you. Your past is not a prison. Your past is a pattern, and patterns collapse under direct observation. You are not trapped. You are conditioned. The moment you recognize conditioning, it begins to crack. The moment it cracks, truth begins to leak through. And the moment truth leaks through, the old identity cannot hold itself together. Most people run from this collapse. They rush back into their routines. They cling to the comfort of their narrative. They strengthen the walls of the very prison that keeps them small, because an identity, even a painful one, feels safer than the unknown. But the unknown is the only place where transformation lives. You feel the collapse not as chaos, but as clarity, a clarity that cuts through illusion, a clarity that reveals the framework you once mistook for fate, a clarity that exposes the artificial boundaries you built around your own becoming. Your story begins to fall away in pieces, not violently, not all at once, but inevitably. The beliefs you defended begin to feel baseless. The limits you honored begin to feel imaginary. The emotional weight you carried begins to feel borrowed. The identity you protected begins to feel too small for the awareness rising within you. The collapse is not failure. The collapse is freedom. Nothing about your identity was final. Nothing about your past was absolute. Nothing about who you are was ever unchangeable. The only thing that made the story feel permanent was your belief in it. And belief is the easiest thing in the world to let go of. Once you see it for what it is, a choice you didn't know you were making. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the fiction that kept you from meeting your real self. When the story collapses, it leaves behind a silence that feels frightening at first, because you mistake silence for emptiness. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is possibility. It is the field on which a new identity can form, not from fear, not from memory, not from survival, but from truth. This collapse is not the end. It is the threshold, the space where the old dissolves and the authentic begins. And once you step through this threshold, you will understand the deepest truth of all. You were never the story. You were the one who survived it, long enough to outgrow it,